Let me preface this tape by saying that I regret that the video is not the best quality, but it's rather old and it was taken from old film anyway. But you may now start your tape and we'll see what we do from here. The videotape, that is. You might want to cut the mute down because the music on this thing is rather loud, but we'll give it a go anyway. The opening scenes will be rather poor. It showed in Busan in 1950 in Korea while we were ashore. Some of the sailors you see in here were friends of mine and Sam Garrard. These are not sailors, they're young Korean girls that we saw on the streets that were playing. This is some of the one of the hospitals in Busan that was there in 1950. Some of the ladies walking down the street, it was often like their costumes, but you could see up on the hill, there's the Consolation in the foreground, the white ship with the red crosses. This is kind of a view of the city of Busan and the mountains that was behind it. People would carry a lot of things on their heads. In fact, there's some of them on the back. There's myself on the right with and myself on the left there. Man carrying a cart. I don't know why he didn't pull it. It had wheels. That's what I call a papasan there with a high stovepipe hat. There's the ship, the Consolation. Some of the crew of the guys that was on board with us at that time. From the bow picture of it. That was Dr. Walters. She was our anesthesiologist on board the ship, one of the first women doctors to come in the Navy. It's our Liberty launch. This is a forecastle of the ship. We occasionally had lifeboat drills, and this time we had lifeboat races. Some of the crew, the hospital crew, as well as the ship's crew, have races with the lifeboats to make sure they all work properly. There's your dad. This was over on the east coast of Korea now, just when the United States forces or the United Nations forces moved up into North Korea above to the Yalu River. This is some of the ship fleet that was up in that area. And this was in late 1950. That's the USS Missouri. And the USS New Jersey. They were both out there. Ooh, nurse legs. It was cold. This was in around early December, early to mid-December of 1950. Andy Havis. That was smokestack. A fellow named Cooper also worked with Sam Garrard on the Master at Arms Force. This is our chairlift and the litter lift. We'd bring patients on and off the ship. This was taking them off the ship and probably taking them over to the airport or being transferred to another ship in the area to be taken care of. Now this thing goes to black and white, and these are very poor quality pictures because of the deterioration of the film. That was one of the yeomen that worked up in the ship's store. There's Ed Steward, first class petty officer at that time. Very hard to see. These were some of the folks come aboard. They had probably had casualties to bring aboard. They came over for sick call. Oh yes, there goes the litter hoist down now to pick up some litter patients and bring them aboard the ship for treatment. We didn't have a helicopter deck at this time. The helicopter deck didn't get put on until mid-1951. It's hard to see, but that's supposedly the pictures of the land over around Busan. And later on we moved up toward there's Sam Garrard. Later on we moved up north from Busan up near Hungnam when we participated in the evacuation at that time when the UN forces had to make a retrograde action. I don't know what Cooper was trying to do there. I don't know. At least, I guess he's just getting these jollies on jumping on a hawser line that was tied to another boat. You'll see a lot of those pictures I took. I don't know why I took so many pictures. There's Chief Liffam and there was Secretary of the Navy Knox that came aboard and visited the ship, so we had to have a dress parade for him. He's in the felt hat in the civilian clothes there. Picture the troops lined up for inspection during the time. I don't know why I always took pictures of feet, but it seems to me a lot of them in there. Shows a helicopter circling around. There's Bill Suddeth. He's unfortunately died now, but he was one of our guitar players and fiddle players some of our time. One of the doctors, one of our nurses. Now you'll see a picture of Sam Garrard staggering up the deck. We were trying to simulate rough seas. Again, one of the shipmates aboard the ship, I don't know which, I can't, the film is so dim I can't make out who it was, but I think it was a fellow who worked in the finance office. So we moved up to Hungnam, as I mentioned earlier. Snowfall on the ship up there. The girl in the center right behind the snow person is Floyd Mangold. I mentioned her in a letter one time when she provided the same piece of paper that you sent to me earlier, Keith. Some of the ship's company standing out there watching and seeing what's going on. As you can see, the land is mountainous. It was up toward North Korea at that time. There's an LSD. There's some of the other ships in the area. The smoke is over on the mainland. That's some of the shipping that was in there during the evacuation. The people were burning the place down as they tried to evacuate the area and getting out of there because the Chinese hordes had come across the Yalu River and were attacking from all points. We were taking on, there was a St. Paul firing a salvo. You could see the flash of the guns. we were taking on a lot of casualties, and we were taking on more casualties than we could handle on the ship, so we would have to sort them out and do a triage and try to get them over to other ships where they could be cared for. Not we tried the less serious injured had to be go over to the other ships. We'd put them on personnel carriers, cargo ships, wherever they had enough room for a patient to be put in and where doctors could be taken care of, and corpsmen over there. That's Howard A. Heaton, I mentioned in a previous letter. That's the guy I've been trying to locate. Chief Bob Crosby, no relation to Bing or Bob, either one, but he was one of the chiefs on it. Sam Garrard having a little scuffle with one of the other guys. The chief nurse there in the middle of that picture. This is Busan. There's your dad, Sam Garrard on the left. Brief picture of him. Tugboat heading us out for Japan, pulling us out of the port. Now we're going to spend Christmas, well, actually New Year's in Yokosuka, Japan. And of course, New Year's in Japan is quite a time. So all they dress up, and that's their big holiday of the year. Everybody becomes a year older on 1 January each year. Some of us went up to Kamakura, where there's a big Shinto shrine, and we visited the Shinto shrine and out on the little island, and did some walking around the cliffs and back in some of the caves. There was some beautiful scenery there, and the ocean going over the rocks and so forth. Heaton and Smith and myself all went up there and spent a couple of days. We had liberty to go up there to do that. It's one of the Shinto monuments on the hillside seen from the train. Some of the farmland between Yokosuka and Tokyo. We're back now in Korea again, back in the streets of Busan. I took a lot of little photos. I had a little cheap 8mm camera that used 25-foot film, so and I don't take any very good pictures. I'd even take then, but these are some of the children and the people, the natives of Korea around Busan. There's Howard Heaton again. Heaton and Smith. Heaton had just bought himself a beer and was heading down the street. He was in good shape then. And there's some children. They were happy children. They're playing hopscotch of some sort. Now, you play hopscotch with a child carrying on the back. Well, there I am. We were back in Japan again. We got too busy, I guess, and so this happened to be an amusement park here in Yokosuka, and it was going great big guns when we made a return trip by bringing casualties back from Busan to Yokosuka. They had a naval hospital there, and we also dropped off Army casualties at Yokohama. They had a hospital there. Captain Virtue is sitting there by the pollard. And this is some of the staff, officers, and nurses that were on board the ship. Man in the middle there is Joe Nix. He was the personnel officer of the hospital. One of the Asiatic junks that we saw a lot of around that area. People live aboard those ships. I guess we're going back in to get some kind of color now. Sunbathing. My goodness, was so comfortable up there on top deck. Bright sunny light out through coming through the hatchway. I think we may be going up to Incheon about this time because I think this was shortly after the New Year and getting ready for the landing at Incheon. I believe this is the harbor up there. And another picture of the little puppy dog. Some little Korean boy had him a nice pet there to go along with his bicycle. That was the hospital ship Repose. It finally joined us in Korea in late '51. The Benevolence was supposed to have joined us, but it was rammed by a freighter in San Francisco Bay and sunk with the loss of some lives. This is a picture of the fuel dump that got blown up during things, so I've got quite a lengthy bit of footage here, so if you want to put it fast forward you can do that now or whatever you want to do, but I got too much of this. I guess I was entranced by the fire, and this was a black and white film, and now maybe a little later it'll come up color. There was quite an explosion that day. A lot of barrels and things were flying in the air from the explosions, and the heat was jumping up. It was pretty good size. That's Pak Jung Sam. He was our interpreter on board ship. We brought him on board so he could translate and interpret. That's Ed Steward. Pak worked with me and Sam Garrard trying to talk to the Korean patients. There's Sam. That's a pretty good picture, Sam, I think. Pak Jung Sam had learned his English by reading the King James Version of the Bible, so his English was lots of these and thous and those. This is the harbor at Busan, where we tied up most of the time, and the railroad track there where they would bring trainloads of casualties in from the north up there. Our boys getting a little recreation down there, playing a little ball games. There's Ed Steward, first class petty officer. It's Walmido Island, right off of Incheon. Oh, I'm sorry, that was wrong number. This is another amusement park in Yokosuka that we went to one other time we came back. I showed you back and showed you a black and white of the thing before. But, as you can see, this film is deteriorated in it. And here is a picture, or else a video person, one of the doctors trying to take some photographs of a nurse friend. Sunbathing time. I may have gotten these things out of sequence in doing this thing up, but anyway, that's a forward port of the ship. You can see looking up toward the pilots. I guess I've been out of the Navy so long, can't remember what they call the place. The wheelhouse is where I'm thinking about. There's a cruiser in Northampton, or not Northampton. Can't even remember the name of that, but anyway, that's one of the cruisers that was up there in Incheon Harbor. Small little patrol boat that we brought in. One of the nurses and the doctor got left on shore, and had to wait for them to be caught aback. They didn't want to miss ship, so one of the patrol boats, an Army patrol boat, bought them out. You'll see them getting up on the ladder. There they go. Dr. Jeffries was the chief dentist on the ship. Here's Bill Mayer. He was a corpsman, third-class corpsman, worked for Sam and me. He wasn't very strong. I can't remember this young man's name, but he's was very active in our group. I believe this is in port at Incheon. However, as I look at the mountains, I don't believe Incheon had that high a mountain behind it. And this may be Busan. 45, 47 years is a long time to remember this sort of thing. So I wish I'd had a way of titling these things to know where we are. Now this must be Busan, because there's the hospital ship Jutlandia and the British hospital. Jutlandia was from Denmark. The other hospital ship was British. The nameplate for the ship again. I don't know why I took so many pictures of that. I guess just to make sure and everybody knew where I was. Sunset over the Pacific. I hope you've been able to keep up the tape with the scenes that I'm talking about on the video. Maybe you can synchronize it somehow or other as you go along. Stopgap filming, so you're trying to get the picture of the sun going down. There was a ship that went across the front of that thing somewhere out there. There it is. I thought that would rather, I remember taking that picture anyway, but my goodness, the quality is so poor. The quality may have been poor from the person that adapted that movie film to the videotape. This is a seaplane. Looks like a small tugboat with all the fenders hanging out on it. Don't know where we are on this one, but anyway, I got another pair of nurse's legs hanging out. This must be in Yokosuka, in Japan. Yes, it is. That's a street scene down in one of the market streets down in Yokosuka, Japan. Good old American sign going down the street of Japan. One of the trolleys that was running between locally around Yokosuka. Well, some aviation scenes. I don't know what for or what they are, but anyway, that looks like some fighter planes of some sort. My goodness. Boats look like, oh, here we are, we're into San Diego. This is our first homecoming in 1951. When we returned back to the United States, we put into San Diego and offloaded some patients there. We were met by a Navy band and a high school band, of course, with the high school cheerleaders or some of the dignitaries there, and a welcome from the Admiral and the Navy band marching off. I received the good news when we put into port there that I had been selected for Chief Petty Officer and would be promoted on the 16th of June of 1951. Now this goes back to Korea. After we'd put in the yard, had a new hospital, I had a new helicopter deck put on the after end of the ship. This was Danny Kaye's performance in Busan, just shortly after we got back over there in this was about August or September of 1951 when we returned. And I think Sam Garrard had left the ship at this time because there's no other indication. I don't know who the lady was that was singing there, but that was the Danny Kaye show that had come to Busan. As you can see, the helicopter deck is there, and here comes a helicopter to sit down on us. In the background is the USS Repose. The helicopter is now landing on our new helicopter deck, and this is in Busan, where we were able to take casualties on from helicopters at that time. And see, the litter bearers now carrying the casualties down into the ship to where they can be treated. And away she goes. They discharge the patient and leaves the bed. You know, interesting, I didn't even get a good picture of the deck of that ship. A friend of mine made me a model of that ship, and we talked a long time as to what color it was painted. Whether the deck was gray or green or what other color it might have been. Well, we spent a lot of time around Incheon in our second cruise. But this is from the helicopter deck. You don't see the deck itself, but you can see a helicopter parked there looking toward the stack on the ship. Commode Marine Helicopter Squadron 161. There I am. It's Chief Petty Officer Ed Steward on their second tour. Hello there, everybody. Had a little snowfall when we got up around Incheon there and up in the northern part around Seoul. Coming back aboard ship from a little tour across to the town of Incheon. Always a lot of traffic of the civilian boats around that we always had. A lot of people would follow our ship. There was our livery boat as we went ashore to go and have some recreation in the town. But a lot of times some small boats would hang around the fantail of the Consolation, hoping that some of the garbage would get thrown off as they could scavenge. That's how desperate some of those folks were for food. So you can see an awful lot of those junks and stuff going out, doing their own fishing or whatever they're trying to do to get from one place to another. Well, that's the end of it, folks. I thought rather than to delay any longer getting this tape to you so you could look at it, I would go ahead and send the copy I have. And if you feel up to it and you want to make copies of it, please do so. I don't have a way of making copies, and I've tried around town to find a place that would do it. And I have nothing here in this small town that will do something like that. I probably ought to borrow a VCR from somebody else and try to hook it up and do it myself. But I'll tell you what you do. If you want to send it back to me and I'll try again, or however you You're welcome to make a copy if you can do that, whatever you want to do. But I would like to get this back at some future date. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.